Hello, welcome to today's session, 3 tools for difficult conversations. How do you like my Band-Aid? Yes, 3 tools. 3 tools for difficult conversations. You likely have times when you can connect with people and the two of you can influence each other. And you know it's in a sense an above board discussion where everything is more logical, more fact-based, more discussion, more give and take. And then there are the difficult conversations. We all have them. I'm not immune. You're not immune. We have them. It's part of life. It's going to keep happening. As we have difficult conversations, there are 3 tools that you can use to move forward with these difficult conversations in a more positive way, in a more collaborative way. So let's talk specifically about the ways that you can move forward in having a difficult conversation. Here are 3 tools to become more collaborative in having a difficult conversation. As usual, I will put them up as a shortcut so that you know exactly from the beginning what you're getting. You're getting implemental mindset, you're getting values, and you're getting no. You might be saying, Senia, what is this implemental? What is this values? What is this no? All right, so here are 3 things that you can do in a conversation that you likely know is going to be a difficult conversation. Implemental, values, and no. Implemental and deliberative. This is some of my favorite research, and we get into it in a different session in more detail. But in summary, Peter Gallwitzer has done research on the fact that our brains are often in 2 different states, one or the other. One is called the implemental kind of thinking and implemental mindset, and the other is the deliberative mindset. Deliberative is when you are trying to decide about something. And implemental is when you are already at that place that you've decided and you're about to implement it. Now, why does this matter for the purpose of difficult conversations? When you're about to have a difficult conversation, it is easier for the 2 of you to end up in a deliberative state. So you're thinking and constantly wondering and thinking, how is it going to go, as opposed to implementing, which is getting it done. So one way, the first tool of adding to a difficult conversation is moving from deliberative to implemental. What does this mean pragmatically? Let's say I'm about to have a more difficult conversation. One of the things that I can keep in mind is we might not completely decide about the how or what we're going to do, that deliberating, but we can both start to work towards the future, towards implementing. So one way of doing that is when I have this discussion. So you choose a name for me. Let's hear in the comments, what name should I use for the person with whom I'm having a difficult conversation? I'll wait till I get your advice on what name to use as my sample name. In the meantime, I'll just use person X. If I'm about to have a conversation with person X, and I know there might be a little bit of conflict, one of the ways that I can get us to both see things from the same point of view or be on the same page is I can move us towards thinking about that desired future. So I can preface the meeting by saying, we have a half hour together today. How about we divide it like this? How about we think about whether we should move forward on this venture for the first third of the meeting? John, somebody's suggesting John. I'll go with either John or person X. Thank you for your suggestion. So I'll go with John. You're the first one in, you voted, I'll go with John. As you're about to have this conversation, you could say, let's divide it into thirds, where we have a half hour conversation or an hour. For the first part, let's talk about what we really want to be doing. Then for the second part, let's imagine where we'd like to go. And then for the third part, let's just figure out what the action steps are. So nobody's going to disagree with you about this because it's a very typical and standard process for meetings. Let's think about what, let's decide how we'll move towards that what, and let's actually plan our actions. What you're doing by setting this up next, you can say, all right, we know in advance that you and I are going to see things a little bit differently. So why don't I take this opportunity to explore what your concerns are? That's deciding about that implemental. You can think about it as, should we implement this policy or should we not? So you're admitting right from the beginning, we may disagree, but let's look at it. Let's look at what your concerns are, what's not working. You're addressing what is on that person's mind. And we all need to do this more. We all need to do this more. That's the first part. So you're addressing, they'll share some concerns. Listen really, really thoughtfully. Really listen, comment, think about what they're saying. And then second part, deliberative. So you can say, okay, now that we've looked at some of your concerns, what if we did implement this venture or this project? Let's look 18 months forward. What does it look like? What's the best possible world if we do implement it? What would be amazing in 18 months? So imagine it's gone as well as possible. What could be amazing about this? So now you're co-creating, you're thinking, you're planning. I'll read you this is more of a poetic kind of quote, but I'll read you a quote from the author of The Little Prince, from Antoine Saint-Exupéry. It's from a different book of his. It's down here, Airman's Odyssey, because he's a pilot. And he says, so please take this in the context of work, but he says, love does not consist of gazing at each other, but in looking outward together in the same direction. By moving towards this same implemental vision, what could be the best possible outcome in 18 months? By moving towards that together, what you're doing is you're looking outwards in the same direction. So what you've just done in that conversation, if you said, let's address your concerns, let's imagine the best possible future in whatever the time period is. I'm using 18 months with my colleague, John. And then once you've talked about those two pieces, concerns and what could this be, and really both of you brainstorm, what is that amazing future? Then you can get to actions. Given this, our concerns and what we can imagine, what are some things we can do? What are next steps? Really simple, usually collaborative conversation. So I'm saying if you know it's going to be a difficult conversation, this is a way to get it more collaborative. That was item 1. Imp for implemental. I also use the word imp. There's a beautiful paper, I think, in psychological science, it's called the imp in your mind. If you've got something on your mind, you're likely going to blurt it out. You're likely going to say it. So I use imp as a shortcut for implemental, because just kind of think that little impish thing. Okay, let's talk about the concerns. Then let's get to that implemental. How would we implement this in 18 months? And then the action steps. So that's phase 1. That's the first thing you can do in a difficult conversation. Here's tool number 2. Tool number 2 is values. You both work at the same company, or you are a company and a vendor, or you are a company and your client. You are in a project together. And a small aside, I'm an executive coach. I run a company of executive coaches. I really love that the definition of coaching is that it is a partnership with a leader towards the leader's goals. So you are in partnership with somebody. When you're in partnership with somebody, one of the biggest things you can call on is joint values. I'll give you an example of how you can do that. As you're having a conversation, which may at some points be a difficult conversation, you can say, hey, I know we both share the value of getting this company to the best possible position by the end of this year. I know we both share the value of honesty and integrity. I know we both share the value of safety for our team and employees. When you focus things in that lens, it's another collaborative way. It's another way of looking out together. And thank you. Yeah, you and I are speaking the same way. So Violette is pointing out to us that looking outwards in the same direction is having that collaborative conversation. Either you stole the words from me, or you and I are right on the same wavelength. Thank you so much. So exactly, as you're speaking about values and you're bringing up your and John's values, you're really setting that foundation for the lens through which you can have this conversation. That one was simple, right? So implemental, it's always hard for me to focus this. Implemental, which is if we were to implement this in 18 months, what would it look like? Values, which is I know we share these, and then really focus on values that you know you share. And the third, and I'm going to put up a book, the third is no. If you're about to have a difficult conversation, have your colleague, your joint partner in this conversation, have them say no. That might sound weird as the ending sort of advice, the soundbite advice, have them say no. I really rely on a section of this book, which I'll hold up, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. He's a negotiator, a hostage negotiator, but he talks about things that we can apply to just regular relationships, nothing at extremely high stakes. And what he says is this third idea of no. He says, look, when two people are not really on the same page, like the good guy and the person who's holding hostages, it's hard to get on the same page. But one thing you can do is you can give that person a sense of autonomy. You can show them just where they're in control and how they can set boundaries against you. So one way of asking no questions, and you can get more content from this book by Chris Voss, one way of adding a no question to a difficult conversation is really just, again, getting on the same page. So say you're thinking about a project that could start now and be effective and profitable and useful for the company in 18 months. Let's say you're thinking about that project. Would it be a ridiculous idea to start exploring some vendors that could give us a little color about moving forward with this project? Would it be absolutely infeasible to get a pilot of this project done in the next month? So what you're doing is you're asking people, in a sense, to dream with you. Would it be unthinkable, impossible, ridiculous? And the answer is likely no. It's likely not impossible. It's likely not ridiculous. So now you've allowed a person to say, no, I would explore that. So I will summarize. We have talked about implemental, which is a long word. If you have a crisper word for me for that, please tell me. Implemental, mindset, values, and no. And I'll just summarize them before I turn to your takeaways, what your takeaways are from today and any questions you have. Oh, somebody just said they read this book recently. Yes, super book. Just really useful for any kind of relationships because it's about human nature. All right, to summarize our implemental, values, and no. Implemental, that's about dreaming in the same direction. And the best way to have that conversation is to divide it at the beginning of the conversation into thirds, to say, let's talk about concerns. Then let's talk about if we were to be as successful as possible in this project within this time frame. And then what are the next action steps for us to evaluate both the concerns and how we could be as successful as possible. So that's one type of conversation. That's that deliberative, implemental action steps. And I call that implemental. I think one other way that I think about it is how can we dream together? How can we collaborate together? So that's number one. Number two is values. Given that we both believe so strongly in employee safety, how could we do this? Whatever that joint value is. Again, you're looking out in the same direction. And the third for today, for difficult conversation, the third tool for difficult conversations, the third tool is how can I get my partner in this set of problems that we're trying to solve? How can I get my partner, John, to say no to those things that we definitely don't want to do? We don't want to throw the idea of away the idea of a pilot. So would it be impossible to run a pilot in the first month? Would it be ridiculous to even entertain the idea of going out to speak to this person for advice?